What if the single most important material in human history wasn't the gold of kings or the iron of empires, but a soft, reddish metal found gleaming in a riverbed? This is the story of copper, the element that quietly taught humanity how to build, how to trade, and how to conquer. It is the story of our first true mastery over the earth itself, the transition from stone to metal, and the foundation for the entire modern world. Our journey begins not in a grand laboratory, but in the Neolithic dawn, perhaps 10,000 years ago in the lands of the Fertile Crescent. The first copper used wasn't mined, it was found. Native copper, pure metallic nuggets pushed to the surface by geology, would have been picked up like any other curious stone. But this stone was different. When struck with a flint hammer, it didn't shatter. It bent. It could be shaped. Archaeological sites in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, like Çatalhöyük, have yielded copper beads and pendants dating as far back as 7500 BCE, ornamental trifles that represent a monumental leap in human consciousness. This initial cold hammering was a curiosity, but the true revolution, the one that defines the Chalcolithic or Copper Age, was the discovery of smelting. Around 5000 BCE, this is a moment of pure human ingenuity, likely discovered by accident. Perhaps a potter, using greenish copper ore rocks like malachite to decorate a pot, placed it in a kiln that was hotter than usual. In the morning, amidst the ashes, they would have found not a green stone, but a gleaming liquid-hardened puddle of pure copper. This was alchemy. Humans had, for the first time, unbound a metal from its rocky prison, transforming a rock into a thing of pure, usable power. This new material was transformative. Pure copper tools, like the one famously carried by Ötzi the Iceman around 3300 BCE, were sharper and more durable than their stone counterparts. Discovered frozen in the Alps, Ötzi's perfectly preserved copper axe was a high-status, high-technology tool, a symbol of power and a practical necessity for survival. But copper had a flaw. It was soft. It couldn't hold an edge for long, especially in combat. The solution, discovered around 3300 BCE in the Near East, was another accident of genius alloying. By mixing a small amount of another, rarer metal, usually tin or arsenic, with molten copper, smiths created something entirely new: bronze. Bronze was not just hard, it was revolutionary. It could be cast into complex shapes: swords, helmets, shields, and sickle blades that were impossible to make from stone and far superior to copper. This discovery was so profound that it ended the Stone Age and launched an entire epoch, the Bronze Age. The demand for bronze ignited the world's first global economy. The catch was that copper and tin are almost never found in the same place. Copper was relatively abundant, with massive deposits in places like Cyprus, whose very name became synonymous with the metal, from the Greek kypros. But tin was catastrophically rare, found only in remote locations like modern-day Afghanistan or Cornwall in the British Isles. To make bronze, civilizations like the Egyptians, the Minoans, and the Mycenaeans had to establish and protect vast, dangerous, and incredibly complex trade routes. The greatest piece of evidence we have for this network is the Uluburun shipwreck, discovered off the coast of Turkey. Dating to the 14th century BCE, its cargo was a king's ransom: 10 tons of raw copper ingots, shaped like ox hides for carrying, and 1 ton of tin. It was a floating factory, a snapshot of an interconnected world bound together by the thirst for this single alloy, a supply chain vulnerable to pirates, storms, and the collapse of empires. Bronze didn't just create wealth, it created power, and it defined warfare for 2 millennia. The chariots that clashed at the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BCE, the epic duels of the Trojan War, the very rise of the first empires, all were underwritten by bronze, a state that controlled the copper and tin. Trade could field an army with superior weapons, protected by superior armor. This created a new class of warrior, aristocracy, and centralized power in the hands of kings who could afford to equip their armies. But it was more than just a material of war. In Egypt, copper's reddish hue associated it with the sun and eternity. Its antiseptic properties were even noted in early medical texts. In the Mediterranean, it was linked to the divine, the goddess of love. Aphrodite was the lady of Cyprus, her power and beauty intrinsically tied to the island's copper wealth. The metal was a symbol of status, a medium for art, and a sacred offering. But this progress had a dark human cost. Bronze Age mining, like the great ore mines in Wales, was a brutal, terrifying endeavor. Men and even children would crawl into pitch-black, unstable tunnels. Using stone hammers and animal bone shovels to chip away at the ore, they worked by the flickering light of animal fat lamps, breathing toxic dust, their lives spent in darkness to produce the metal of light. Some historians suggest this vast, exploited labor force, often slaves or prisoners, was the hidden engine of the Bronze Age, their efforts fueling the workshops of the smiths, who themselves were seen as part magician, part artisan. The Bronze Age world was a colossus built on a fragile supply chain. Around 1200 BCE, this system shattered. The Bronze Age collapse saw a period of drought, famine, and invasion that severed the trade routes. Without tin, the Bronze empires fell. This collapse forced a new innovation, creating a power vacuum filled by a harder, more difficult but more common metal, iron. Copper's time as the dominant military and political material was over, or so it seemed. For millennia, it remained a crucial, if secondary, metal used for roofing, plumbing, and coinage. Like the heaviest coins of the Roman Republic, its true power, however, lay dormant, hidden in its fundamental nature. The scientific insight is simple. Copper is an exceptional conductor. It allows electrons to flow through it with very little resistance. This property, useless to a pharaoh, would redefine humanity. In the 19th century, with the discovery of electromagnetism by scientists like Faraday and the inventions of Morse and Edison, copper was reborn. That same reddish metal, once hammered into beads and forged into swords, was now drawn into slender wires. It became the sinew of a new world, carrying not armies but information and energy. The telegraph, the telephone, the electric light bulb, and the entire power grid that supports our modern life are all built on copper. The Bronze Age never truly ended. It just went electric. Copper reveals something profound about us, that our destiny is not just to find, but to transform. We are defined by our ability to see potential in a simple rock, to melt it, alloy it, and bend it to our will, shaping it first into a tool, then an empire, and finally, into the very network of a connected planet. If you love exploring the hidden forces that shaped our world, subscribe for more stories like this.